We had a couple of names. The first name, it was Vandy C and the Highpower 3. And the Highpower 3 was Freak L, Busy G, and Wayne B. And I had the party starter, Bill Blast. So Bill would actually kind of open up for the Highpower 3. And then I put a lot of time, like I said, trying to get them recorded. It fell apart. And I had ended up getting frustrated because they didn't really want it as bad as I wanted it, you know. So I got kind of frustrated, you know, with the fact they didn't want it. Everybody don't want the same thing. You know, I was sleeping and eating and I just, you know, I needed it. You know, I was like, we got to do it, you know, and they're like, okay, we'll do it. But, you know, and folk around me was always like, you know, they don't want it as bad as you. You know, even the old heads in the project, you know, when we all young, they just be like, you know, V, why you carrying these? You know, these guys don't really want it like you. Why you slowing down for them? You ought to just, you know, so what I did is eventually I just, I got tired of waiting on them, trying to produce them. So I called Bill Blast. I called him. I said, look, Bill, listen, man, I'm getting ready to go ahead and make records. I'm not going to wait on, you know, on the 3 no more. So if you want to make them with me, then me and you can make them. You know, but if you say yeah, then you gotta, you know, because my thing was get busy or get lost. So you gotta get busy. If you gonna do it, if you say yeah, let's go. So he said, I'm down, V, let's go. And I think we had V the Viper done 3 weeks, 2 weeks later. You know, I had the 808, had the stuff already, you know. So we did that. And then Doc Ice from U.T.F.O, him and T-Funk, you know, they was my dudes. So when we was in the studio, I think U.T.F.O was in the studio next door. I forget the studio we was in. And so Doc was like, yo, V, what's up, y'all in there? So then I was like, yeah. So then after he's like, let's do something on, you know, can I get on, you know? So I said, all right, let me put something together real quick. So I put together this thing that turned out to be the B-side. It was called the W.A.P. I think it was the W.A.P. Do the W.A.P. Do the W.A.P. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I don't know my records. You do. Thank you. So we put it, you know, I put the track together real quick. Then Doc came and T-Funk and it was T-Funk. Pretty sure it was T-Funk. Yeah, T-Funk was hanging out with us. And then after that, I just threw everybody on, you know, and it became, you know, pretty cool, you know, so. But yeah, after the DJ thing, it seemed like right after that at Apex, and then my focus was to get on Wax, to start recording. But the problem was I ain't know nobody. So since I ain't know nobody, there was nobody who could put me on. So back then, because it was such a small, you know, pockets of an industry, you know, if you ain't know nobody, it was really hard. You know, you really couldn't kind of make something happen. So what I did is I said, you know, I had always had a team thinking. So I put a team of people around me and we began to talk about ways we could basically create a strategy to end up on Wax. And we came up with radio because alternative radio was starting to blossom and opportunities was there. And so picked up an alternative radio program. Well, first I went to this broadcasting school, MBS in Manhattan, and did it. You know, I did it the regular way. A lot of cats just went on and got on the radio, but I actually went and got trained as a broadcaster. So then after I did finish the program, then I got on 91.5 NYE, and then after I did the NYE thing, I figured now I'll be able to learn who the artists are, who's making records, so the artists will be able to hook me up, cause hey, and then I discovered that artists ain't gonna hook you up. So as I got to know all the artists, you know, it didn't mean nothing, you know. So the fact that, you know, people go, you know so-and-so, you know, this artist, you know, I'm like, yeah, I know them all, but none of them was doing nothing for you. Because the truth is, they was trying to stay on themselves. You know, it was so limited, it really wasn't like everybody trying to throw deals around the way it became a few, you know, 6, 7, 10 years later. So so then I got discouraged a little bit from the artist end of it, because none of the artists was trying to really, you know, work with me. So what I did is I had sat back with my team, thought about it again, and then we came up with basically learning all the industry people, you know, the A&R people, the owners of the labels, the people who own Tommy Boy, the people who own Profile, all the people who own stuff. And then that put me in the room with folk. And because I had the radio program, I had a little viability, you know, so it was like, okay. So then once I got in that way, then I'm starting to slip cats demos. Slip cats demos, you know, it's easy to get a meeting because they know I'm playing their stuff anyway. And then they all slept. But to select Fred Mineo, to Fred Mineo's credit, when I gave him V the Viper, our first record, because I took it to Tommy Boy, you know, Monica Lynch, you know, she didn't hear it. I took it to Profile. I took it everywhere. And Fred, I took it to man, the cat who owned the Fever. Remember Fever Records? Man, he was a cool cat too. I'm trying to remember that Italian's name. Sal. Yeah, Sal was the dude. And Sal, you know, he heard it, but the timing was bad for him. So I went to Fred Mineo. It was real raw then. It didn't even have the hook, V the Viper in. And I understand why they passed on it, because production-wise, it was real raw and they couldn't get past, you know, they still learning the music. But to Fred Mineo's credit, Fred said, he said, well, you know, Vandy, if you put a hook on it, you know, you might be able to do something with it, you know. And I'm like, you know, if you can't sign it like this, you don't know what time it is, you know. I'm just thinking, you don't know what time it is, you know. So, but a part of me, even if I didn't agree with something, I still would try it, you know what I mean? So I went back, I just listened to the record. I took the part where I said, I'm V the Viper. I sampled it, and that became the V, the Viper, V, you know, and that's how I did it. And then we released it first on W.A.P Records, which was a guy who had a label. He was real good friends with Bad Boys and Fat Boys. You know, he was, you know, they looked up to him. Matter of fact, it was Marky D from Fat Boys who introduced me to W.A.P because he came down to my radio station, and W.A.P had a label, and everybody knew I had a business sense. So they said, you know, you ought to get with Vandy to run your label, you know what I mean? So they came and introduced us, and we clicked. So I started running this label for him. And then, but he had stuff that really didn't have flavor. And he's putting all this money into it, you know, and he had money to burn because, you know, back then, you know, cats is flipping paper, you know, they selling drugs. So he was selling drugs. And I just felt bad for him. So I said, listen, why don't you let me do something for you? Because, you know, you paying me all this money, you putting out all these records, I don't even want to play on the radio, you know. So I went in the studio. That's when we did the remix version of V the Viper that ended up being V the Viper. And then we put it out, and then Select and Tommy Boy and everybody's calling, why you ain't play that for me? I'd have signed that. Why you ain't? And I'm like, that was it, you know, that was the joy. You didn't, you know, that's the one you said no. And so they said, and this is how I started getting into producing, because what happened is they said, Monica in particular, she was the first one to say it. She said, well, if you got anything else, bring it to me. And so because I was at the radio station, there was always people coming by. You know, I'm trying to get this, you know, trying to get on. They doing like I was doing 5-10 months earlier. And there was these guys, Tony D, and I forget the other kid's name.
Gino G.
Gino?
Cool Gino G.
Cool, yeah. And so they had left the demo with me, you know, because I was always the kind of person, I'll give you an ear. You know, if you know, it didn't matter. You know, it came back to bless me a lot of times where I would look out for people when they ain't had nothing. And it seemed like everybody saying my name, I still looked out for people. And in his case, you know, they came, I listened, I was like, I ain't nothing I can do with it. I'm not a record company, you know, sounds kind of decent. And, you know, when Monica said that, she said, if you got any other projects? And I said, well, I got a demo, you know. And I called Tony, I said, listen, man, I can get you on Tommy Boy if I'm your producer, you know. And he said, bet, you know. So I got that, and that was the thing that started the production career, even though I really didn't kind of want it, you know what I mean? And I did that even though I didn't touch the record. I really, you know, I produced it just by taking them in the studio, but I let them do what they do. And that was a mistake, you know what I mean? That was one of the learning the mistakes, because what happened is, of course, I mean, I knew it was okay, but I knew it wasn't, and I ain't putting no work in it. I'm just taking the check. Look, I'm producing, y'all. Hey, I got you on. We got a deal, you know? And then when it didn't happen, you know, now I took them in the studio and we had some hot stuff. And I'm standing before Tommy Boy, you know, and they like, we don't want to put it out because we thought the other stuff was hot. And I'm like, you don't realize the difference between this and that? And I realized that a lot of them labels, they really didn't know what the music really was. They just, Eventually they started getting a feel for stuff, but a lot of that stuff was, they just happened to get it, you know, and they get it, the right one come and let's take a chance, and it popped. And so I'm standing there like, but this right here, what I got is straight butter. You really don't want this? And they didn't. And but that's when I realized that if I don't have integrity with how I approach the production, then I'm not gonna end up doing any work, you know. So at that point, that's when I changed my whole attitude. I learned the lesson real early. Thank God that I didn't have to learn it without making money, because then I was able to, you know, kind of change it around. And then I took production and got serious with that as I was doing the artist stuff. That was real cool, because with V the Viper, you know, once we started hearing that thing on New York radio, once we started doing shows, and we was like, man, you know, cats will pay us like this to do, you know, to do this, you know. We was like, we did this for nothing for forever, you know. And then, you know, Lemo's picking us up. We like, man, we feeling like celebrities, you know. And I realized, you know, it was time to take things to the next level. So what I did is I asked WAP, I said, look, man, I said, you know, I don't, you know, want to, you know, make you feel bad for, you know, not staying with you, but, you know, I can't be running the label I'm on. You know what I mean? I put that record out initially with you, but I want to do a distribution deal, get it picked up somewhere else. You know, I'll still run your label for you, but, and so he was cool with it. He was like, all right, that's what's up. So then that's when I got back to Fred, because Fred was the one who gave me the, so, you know, so of course he's immediately, and plus his artist Doc is on our, you know, B-side. So he's like, yeah, this works, you know. So then our contract was for the next single, and the next single was Just Feel It, you know. So, you know, we really had a wonderful time. That's why our stuff is all just fun, because it was all just, it was a wonderful time, you know. It was a wonderful time to be in hip hop. It was a wonderful time to be an MC or an artist. Everything, it was real pure, you know, back then. It wasn't what I seen it eventually evolve into. And then by the time I left the game, and I think it was 90, the last thing I did was an artist for Elektra, who they never released. Shazzy was her name. And she had a record, an album or something out previously. And we did a lot of, just a lot of back and forth in the studio. So they loved my tracks, but they didn't like the rest of the album. I did 3 songs, and then other people did the rest. And it ended up just getting left. They didn't, you know, follow up with it. And by that point is when I was coming out of the whole, you know, the whole genre, you know, and just really going into what eventually turned into ministry for me. It's the same thing that Run DMC ended up doing my Adidas. You know, back then everybody was finding what they were connected to. You know what I'm saying? So we liked, you know, for a season, Coca-Cola was starting to come out with gear. They started coming out with gear. And so we was trying to find some gear that everybody wasn't wearing that we can identify with, just like Running them ended up doing Adidas, and then getting the whole where now they connected people to Adidas, but really we was all wearing Adidas before Running them said my Adidas. But then it blew up where Adidas got behind them. And so everybody kind of connected Adidas to Running them, you know what I mean? So when that whole season, you know, they wasn't the only ones. There were other people who were connecting to, whether it was Polo, whether it was, you know what I mean? And for us, it was the Coca-Cola stuff, because I always liked stuff other people wasn't wearing. And I was like, man, this Coca-Cola stuff is fun. I mean, they had the same kind of polo shirts, you know, it was cool. So when we did our press release pictures, we went and got Coca-Cola t-shirts, you know. So that's why in the song when I'm talking about, you know, Coca-Cola down, you know, it's because we was always wearing Coca-Cola stuff, because that's the stuff we were going to eventually go approach Coca-Cola about and say, y'all need to get behind us, you know, that type of thing. We did, but we never released them. We did. Me and Bill did. We went through seasons of frustration because we had tracks that we thought would be phenomenal. You know, we had songs that we was, you know, ready to release, and the game started changing, where it became more political to get your deals done. And once it got so political, traditionally, I was always a real straight shooter. So political things, I failed at real miserable, you know, because if I had to kind of, you know, if again, I was a get busy or get lost guy, you know, so that means if I ain't feeling you, you knew it. You know, it wasn't like you like, oh, hey, he likes me and I walk away like this, you know, it's like, if I'm around you and I ain't feeling you, you know, how you talking and what you doing, it's like you would know it, because I wouldn't even front. It was like, so there was so much politics and I had not learned how to do that part of it. So as a result, I think I limited the options, you know what I'm saying? And I think I was more, I wasn't militant, but I was more, I certainly was an aggressive personality, seeing the lines between race and the way things are being done and deals were being done. And I was vocal, I was outspoken. So you know, so I was kind of like the one in the room you'd rather not have in the room. And I think that limited our options to a large degree. So we went through a season where I couldn't get us deals. You know, I can get the production stuff because it's my tracks. When the artist goes in with the tracks, they like, yo, I like the track, and they like, who did it? All right, fine. You know what I mean? But as far as the artist stuff, we couldn't get. So we ended up changing our name to Blackmail. Me and Bill changed our name to Blackmail. We recorded I did a whole album for us that never got released. Whole album. Had some hot songs on there, but it was angry stuff. We was like, I'm tired of waiting for record companies to sign us, you know, that type of stuff. You know, I mean, it was raw, you know, stuff that probably better it never came out, because we be sitting there like, man, we was mad, you know. But yeah, that's kind of how we kind of approach things, the transition in terms of the whole records for us. Okay.